Airports are built for people who move fast. For people who already know where they're going. That morning, as she stood near the entrance, it felt like the building itself was waiting, watching, testing. She paused. Just a second. Enough to notice her son and his wife were already a few steps ahead. They didn't look back. Not immediately. She laughed softly, shaking her head at herself. Ha, of course, she told herself. Just age, slowing her down. Her name doesn't matter anymore. People speak around her now, not to her. They answer questions she hasn't finished asking. She notices it, as always, but she doesn't comment. Not yet. The airport swallowed them in noise. Rolling suitcases, announcements echoing, voices overlapping. She walked carefully, trying to keep up. Her son moved ahead with that easy confidence she always envied. The same boy who once clung to her coat in crowded places now parted the sea of strangers as if it belonged to him. His wife followed beside him. Well-dressed. Calm. Polite. Efficient. She asked if she was comfortable. If she had everything. Before the words finished leaving her lips, the conversation had moved on. Something about that made her chest tighten. She adjusted the strap of her handbag and realized she was holding it too tightly. They were traveling together. That was what mattered. That was what she kept repeating like a mantra. Invitations at her age are rare. People assume you prefer quiet corners, waiting for visits that barely last. She wanted to believe this was different. She wanted to feel wanted. When her son said, "You're coming with us," she laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt sudden. Unexpected. She asked if he was sure. He answered without looking at her. His wife smiled, lightly, almost too quickly, and said, "Of course, why wouldn't you?" The words lingered longer than they should have. She swallowed, hesitated, and followed. The night before, she packed slowly. Folded her clothes, then unfolded them. Changed outfits she would barely be seen in. Her passport lay on the table. She kept checking it, gripping it tighter each time. Ha, silly, she thought. But the grip didn't loosen. That morning, small shifts in plans unsettled her. Lines changed. Directions adjusted. "It'll be faster this way," his wife said, "we'll handle the tickets." The tone was polite, calm, but it carried an edge of control. Her breath caught. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Something felt off. Just a whisper of a thought. Maybe nothing. She noticed how often she was told to wait. Just a moment. Just here. Just stay close. Small pauses. Small separations. Nothing alarming. Nothing worth questioning. Yet each pause left a tiny ache in her chest. She tightened her grip on the handbag again. The airport smelled of coffee and urgency. Wheels rolled past. Screens blinked with departures and promises. Her daughter-in-law joked about her losing her passport and laughed lightly, already turning away. She smiled too, but the smile felt uneven, fading too quickly. The moment passed before she could fully enjoy it. She looked at her son. Pride rose automatically. She followed instinctively. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, but stopped herself. The words didn't feel safe, even though nothing had happened yet. She swallowed again, letting the thought die quietly. As they moved deeper into the terminal, she fell half a step behind. Not lost. Just enough to notice the distance. The pause, the hesitation, the tightened grip, they told her more than anyone's words could. She tried to dismiss it, to laugh quietly at herself. Just nerves. She didn't know why her heart felt unsettled. No argument. No raised voice. Just a feeling she couldn't name yet. All she knew was that she trusted them enough to keep walking. And she didn't realize how much that trust was about to cost her. The airport moved around her like a river she couldn't control. People pushed past. Rolling suitcases scraped the tiles. Announcements echoed, sharp and insistent. She stayed close. Tried to keep up. Tightened the strap of her handbag. Her knuckles whitened. Her son moved ahead, confident. Phone in hand. Eyes focused. The same boy who once clung to her coat now parted the crowd as if it belonged to him. She wanted to call out. To ask if they were on the right line. But the words stuck in her throat. She swallowed. Stepped forward. His wife followed. Calm. Polite. Efficient. She asked if she had everything. The words sounded soft, but her tone clipped, rehearsed. She glanced at her mother-in-law as she spoke. Just briefly. Almost imperceptibly. Then looked away. A hand rested on the small of her back. Too firm. Guiding her forward. She felt a twinge in her chest. They moved toward the check-in counter. Her daughter-in-law tapped at the screens, changed lines without explanation. We'll handle it, she said. Lightly. Quickly. The kind of quickness that left no room for questions. Her son murmured agreement. Didn't look up. She felt the weight of being unseen. She reached for the passport. Fingers grazed it. Daughter-in-law's hand intercepted hers. Light. Almost gentle. But firm enough that her fingers hesitated. She adjusted her grip. Tightened it. Her breath caught. Heartbeat sped. Tiny alarm bells, almost invisible. People moved around her with ease. Families laughed. Couples walked arm in arm. And here she was. Moving slower. Falling half a step behind. She felt it in her body, the uneven rhythm of her steps. The tension in her shoulders. The boarding line stretched ahead. Announcements overlapped, creating a roar that pressed against her ears. She felt her stomach knot. Another shallow breath. Grip tightening again. She wanted to speak. Ask something small. Where was the gate? Did they check the tickets? But she didn't. The words refused to come. Her daughter-in-law's smile returned. Too quick. Just a flicker. A glance away before it could settle. She said, just a few more steps. Almost there. Polite. Calm. But precise. Controlling. Subtle. Enough to make her heart skip. Enough to make her step closer without realizing she was being guided. She noticed the small details now. The pace at which she moved. The little cracks in their timing. The way her son didn't glance back, not once. The way her daughter-in-law subtly redirected her when someone slowed the line. The tiny pressures. Tiny cues she almost missed. Each step felt heavier. Her breaths came in short pulls. Tiny flickers of panic. Almost imperceptible. She shifted her weight. Adjusted her handbag again. Fingers flexed. Knuckles white. Her heartbeat thumped. She tried to focus on the screens ahead. The announcements. Anything else? They passed through security. The flow of people felt like water rushing past her. She slowed, careful not to trip. Careful not to slow them down. Her daughter-in-law guided her, firm hand lingering too long on her back. Subtle. Gentle. Yet controlling. She felt the tension coil tighter in her chest. As they neared the gate, the distance between them stretched. Not enough to panic. But enough for the whisper in her chest to grow louder. Something was off. She didn't know why. She couldn't name it. But her body knew. Heart racing. Grip tightening. Breath shallow. Step hesitant. She followed them anyway. Because she always did. Because she had no choice. And somewhere, deep down, a small seed of doubt began to grow. A seed she would come to remember. She had been following them for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes. The airport stretched ahead, gates and signs twisting in a way that made everything feel larger than it should. Her steps slowed. Not just because of age, but because her chest felt tight, and her stomach had settled into that low, uneasy knot that never left once it appeared. They moved toward a distant gate. She adjusted her handbag, fingers tightening around the strap. Her daughter-in-law walked slightly ahead now, shoulders straight, chin high, speaking softly into her phone. Words she couldn't hear, words that didn't include her. Her son glanced back once. Just once. His eyes flickered across her face. But then they returned to his phone. Focused. Distant. A small panic rose in her chest. She swallowed hard, drawing in a shaky breath. Her steps faltered. Almost missed a tile, caught herself just in time. Her grip on the bag tightened. That instinctive motion, clutching what little she could control, made her chest ache. Her daughter-in-law noticed. Smiled briefly. That smile didn't reach her eyes. She extended a hand, lightly pressing against her back. Just a few steps. Come on. Gentle. Polite. Guiding. And yet, controlling. Her hand lingered a moment longer than necessary, then moved away. She followed. Couldn't not follow. Habit, maybe. Fear, maybe. Love, maybe. Something made her feet move forward despite the whisper of alarm that had begun to creep in. The line of passengers stretched ahead. People moved in clusters, conversations overlapping. Announcements sliced through the background, each one sharper than the last. She felt herself falling behind just slightly. Not enough to be left alone. Not yet. But enough for her chest to tighten further. Her son spoke quietly to his wife. Words she couldn't hear. Laughter, too soft to be certain. He didn't glance at her again. The daughter-in-law's hand briefly grazed her shoulder as they passed someone slowing the line. Light, but deliberate. A subtle signal, follow, stay close, but don't ask. She noticed the small things more than before. The quick glances away. The small adjustment of his wife's handbag. The precise, almost rehearsed, way she answered questions for her. The words were always calm, always reassuring, yet somehow, they pressed her down instead of lifting her up. Her grip on the bag tightened again. Knuckles white. Heart racing. Breath uneven. The gate appeared. Farther than she remembered. The crowd pressed forward, shoving. She stumbled slightly, caught herself, and adjusted the strap of her bag once more. Her daughter-in-law's hand rested on her back again. Guiding. Almost too firmly. Just enough to make her shiver with unease. She tried to speak. A question about the tickets, or which line to follow. But her voice caught. Nothing came out. She swallowed hard. The silence felt heavier than any words. Something in her stomach twisted. A small, anxious thought whispered, "Why is he letting her guide me?" She tried to dismiss it. Tried to tell herself it was nothing. Habit. Politeness. Maybe just the rush of the airport. But the whisper didn't leave. It grew, slow and insistent, curling around her chest, tightening the knot there. Each step forward felt heavier than the last. She glanced at her son. Focused, still on his phone. Not watching her. Not noticing the hesitation in her step. Not noticing the way the line of passengers pushed them further apart. Her daughter-in-law spoke again. Words soft, polite, guiding. Yet the subtle control had already lodged in her bones. Step by step, she felt herself being led and directed through the crowd as if she were small, fragile, and easily misplaced. Her heartbeat raced. Her breaths came shallow and quick. She nearly faltered again but didn't. Couldn't. She had no choice. Not yet. And as they approached the gate, a chill tickled the base of her neck. Not cold. Not wind. A faint awareness that she was slightly separate. Just enough to make her notice. Just enough to make her wonder. Something was not quite right. She didn't have the words to name it. But the body always knows first. And that awareness was growing. She reached the waiting area and hesitated. Just a step. Just a single breath. But the moment stretched longer than it should have. The chairs were cold. Hard plastic. Too far apart. Too quiet. She lowered herself onto one, clutching her handbag like it held the last piece of control in her life. Her son and daughter-in-law had moved ahead. She could still see them. Just barely. But the space between them felt wider than the terminal itself. She tried to catch up, but her feet refused the pace. Her breaths came uneven, shallow, dragging across her chest like smoke. She glanced around the waiting area. Families clustered together, laughing, holding hands. Couples whispered, leaning into one another. Children ran through the aisle, rolling suitcases too big for them. And there she was. Alone in the middle of a crowd. Alone but not invisible. Just unnoticed. The announcements continued, a sharp, metallic rhythm cutting through the soft buzz of the crowd. Flight numbers. Gates. Calls. She tried to focus, tried to follow. But every call she heard was not for her. Every flight she saw listed was for someone else. A tiny, invisible ache settled in her chest. Her daughter-in-law had said she would handle everything. She smiled politely and moved on. Her hand had pressed against the small of her back one last time, guiding her toward the line. Firm, gentle, controlling. She shivered now remembering it. Why did it linger in her memory like that? She tugged at the strap of her handbag. Fingers flexed. Knuckles white. Her stomach twisted. Something felt wrong. But what could it be? She couldn't put a name to it. Just a quiet alarm. An uneasy awareness. She checked her watch. Time moved too fast. Too slow. A flight was called. Not theirs. Then another. Not theirs. She felt the tiny panic in the pit of her stomach. A thrum in her chest. Her breathing became uneven, shallow. She shifted in the seat. Feet tapping lightly on the floor. She looked up. Her son. Her daughter-in-law. Still ahead. Not glancing back. Not noticing. A small flicker of dread crawled through her chest. She wanted to call them. Wanted to speak. Wanted them to pause for just a second. But the words wouldn't come. Her throat constricted. She swallowed hard. A man with a suitcase brushed past. She flinched. A stranger's elbow grazed her shoulder. She adjusted her bag. Tightened her grip again. The motion became almost ritual. Almost protective. Her body began to register the isolation. The weight. The growing distance. The waiting area felt larger now. Noises amplified. The echo of announcements. Rolling suitcases. Footsteps. Her own heartbeat. Each step, each sound, each breath reminded her she was alone. Not in the terminal. Not in the world. But alone with the realization that she was separate from them. Her daughter-in-law appeared briefly at the edge of her vision, smiling, speaking softly into her phone. She didn't look at her. Didn't even glance back. Her son was still absorbed in his own tasks. And there she sat. A small figure in the middle of the space, trying to shrink herself enough to go unnoticed but not invisible enough to be forgotten. A whisper ran through her thoughts, where did they go? Why am I here? The seed planted in the last minutes grew. Quiet. Persistent. Unseen by anyone else. Her chest tightened further. Her grip on the bag became almost painful. She realized she was holding her own hand too. Just to feel herself there. To anchor herself. To remind herself she existed. And for the first time, the truth hit her softly, like a shadow passing across sunlight. She was on her own. Not fully, not yet, but close enough for the alarm in her chest to grow louder. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She only waited. She waited. And waited. Her son and daughter-in-law had disappeared ahead, swallowed by the crowd. The terminal stretched on endlessly, full of travelers with their rolling suitcases and busy conversations. She checked her watch again. They should have returned. They should have checked in with her. She called out softly. Wait a moment? Her voice trembled, small and tentative, almost swallowed by the roar of announcements. Nobody noticed. Nobody turned. The terminal moved around her like a river she couldn't reach. Her heart began to hammer. Each beat louder than the last. Her chest tightened. Fingers dug into the strap of her handbag until it hurt. She glanced toward the gate. Nothing. Not her son. Not his wife. Just a sea of strangers moving past. Her mind raced. Surely they hadn't gone without her. Surely. She took a step forward, then another. Her feet felt heavier with every motion. Her breath came shallow. She tried to call again, louder this time. Please wait. The sound of her own voice startled her, brittle and lonely in the vast terminal. A flash of movement caught her eye. It was her daughter-in-law at the boarding gate. Talking to someone. Smiling. Her son beside her. But their eyes never met hers. Not once. They were already checking in. Already moving toward the plane. Already gone. She froze. A cold shock ran through her chest. Her fingers loosened on her bag, then gripped it tighter. Her knees shook. The reality pressed down like a weight she couldn't lift. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. She wanted to grab them both and demand, no, beg, for them to stay. But the words died in her throat. Her breathing quickened. She felt the tears before they came. Small, sharp stabs behind her eyes. She blinked, trying to steady herself. Ah, it hurt. Not just the body. Not just the shock. The betrayal hit deeper than she thought possible. She remembered every small sign. The guiding hand. The quick glances away. The polite words that didn't include her. The ease with which they moved ahead, leaving her tethered to nothing. Each memory now cut sharper, pricking the skin of her trust. She staggered a step. The terminal felt impossibly large. The announcements, the rolling suitcases, the chatter all blurred into a single, chaotic roar. She could feel every heartbeat pounding in her chest. Every shallow breath scraping her lungs. She looked down at her bag. Clutching it now felt futile. It couldn't protect her. And yet she couldn't move. Not forward. Not backward. She was frozen between disbelief and the raw, painful awareness that they had left her behind. People brushed past. She tried to step aside. Nobody noticed. Nobody reached out. She realized something awful: she was completely invisible. Alone. Her knees wobbled. She sank to a nearby chair. Hand pressed to her chest, gripping the remnants of her composure. She let a single tear slip. Then another. The dam broke slowly at first, then in waves. She buried her face in her hands, quiet sobs escaping her. And the thought that stabbed hardest of all: this wasn't an accident. Not really. Every guiding hand, every polite word, every glance away, they had all led to this. Every step had been purposeful. Every motion intentional. She shook her head. Tried to clear the tears. Tried to tell herself she had imagined it. But deep down, she knew. She was abandoned. Fully. Completely. The terminal continued to move around her. Travelers passed, oblivious. The announcements continued. The roar of luggage wheels, the chatter, the distant laughter, everything pressed in, reminding her of the emptiness beside her. She sat there, trembling, clutching her handbag, feeling the cold plastic chair under her legs, feeling the sharp sting of betrayal burn through her chest. The world went on, but she did not. Not yet. Not until the echo of their departure finally sank in. And then, only then, did the truth settle: she was alone. Alone, in every sense of the word. She stayed in the chair, frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The roar of the terminal pressed in from all sides. Rolling suitcases, chatter, footsteps, each one a reminder that she was alone. Her breaths came shallow, uneven. Heart pounding. Fingers flexing around the strap of her handbag until it hurt. She tried to stand. Legs shaky. Knees wobbling. Almost collapsed. Tightened her grip on the bag. Each movement felt heavier than the last. Her chest ached. Her vision blurred slightly. She blinked, tried to clear it. Tried to tell herself she had imagined it. But no. They were gone. Gone. She looked toward the boarding gate. The line had moved. The crowd had moved. Her son. Her daughter-in-law. All disappeared beyond the doors that led to the plane. She whispered their names. Quiet. Desperate. Please, wait. The words barely carried. Lost in the rush of the terminal. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Fingers fumbling. She could barely unlock it. Each second stretched painfully. Finally, she dialed. Called the number she knew by heart. 1 ring. 2 rings. Then, voicemail. She hung up. Tried again. Same result. Her chest tightened further. She felt heat rise behind her eyes. She scanned the terminal. Security guards. Airport staff. People rushing past. Nobody she knew. Nobody who could help. The weight of the realization settled over her like a thick blanket. She had been left. Completely. Without warning. Without explanation. A flash of anger pierced the panic. How could they? How could they leave her here? She gritted her teeth. Tried to summon her voice. Tried again. Louder. Stop. Wait. But her words were swallowed by the noise. By the distance. By the indifference of a terminal full of strangers. Her legs shook. She sank back into the chair. Hand on her forehead. Fingers gripping her handbag like it contained her very heart. She tried to think. Tried to remember the plan. Tried to find a reason. A mistake. A misunderstanding. But nothing fit. Everything seemed wrong. All at once. Her mind raced. Questions tumbled over one another. Why did they leave her? Did they know she would be helpless? Was it intentional? Or could it be an accident? Could she have misread the pace? Misread the directions? Her chest tightened with the uncertainty. Breath coming faster. Short. Ragged. She tried the phone again. Different numbers. Her son's work. Her daughter-in-law's office. Nothing. Voicemail. Busy signals. She pressed the buttons with shaking hands, tears spilling over her cheeks now. She realized she had no one to call. Not really. Not in this moment. The terminal felt impossibly large. The crowds swirled around her. Voices. Luggage. Announcements. A cacophony that made her feel smaller than she had ever felt. She clutched her handbag to her chest. Fingers digging in. Heart racing. Every breath shallow, rapid. She thought of the guiding hand. The quick smiles. The polite words that had seemed harmless earlier. Each one now felt like part of a plan. Part of the abandonment she was now trapped in. The small seed of unease from the previous moments had grown. Rooted. And now it bloomed fully, betrayal. She let her head fall back against the chair. Closed her eyes. Tried to steady her shaking body. Tried to remember that she had survived alone before. Tried to remember that she could survive now. But the fear was heavy. Tight. Like a hand gripping her chest. And yet, despite the panic, despite the tears, despite the growing knowledge that she had been left behind intentionally, she knew one thing. She could not stop moving. She would find them. She had to. She stood up. Legs trembling, knees weak. The terminal stretched endlessly around her. Voices, rolling suitcases, footsteps, all a river she couldn't control. Her fingers clenched the strap of her handbag, knuckles white. She started moving. Faster now. Step by step. Eyes darting left and right. Searching. Hoping. Praying they had only stopped somewhere ahead. Each glance offered no reassurance. She called their names softly. "Stop, please," her voice cracked. Trembled. Lost in the roar of announcements and rushing travelers. Her daughter-in-law had vanished from sight. And her son, he was nowhere. Not in the check-in line. Not at the boarding gate. Not anywhere she could see. Her stomach sank. Heavy. Twisting. Her chest tightened. She moved toward the next gate. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her heart raced. Breath sharp, fast. And then she saw them. Beyond the glass doors. Her daughter-in-law, smiling lightly, talking to someone. Her son, calm, checking something on his phone. They didn't even glance back. Not once. Shock slammed into her chest. Cold. Heavy. She pressed her hand against the glass, and the exact moment their eyes failed to meet hers, her daughter-in-law laughed softly, amused by something she hadn't yet seen. The calm, deliberate indifference carved itself into her chest like a knife. Every polite word, every guiding hand, every subtle glance, now it all made sense. She had been left. Intentionally. She staggered backward. Fingers gripping the strap of her bag, white-knuckled. Knees wobbling. Breath shallow and uneven. She tried to call out. "Wait. Stop." The words died in her throat, swallowed by the crowd. Her eyes followed them through the gate. Step by step. Rolling suitcases. Boarding passes scanned. Smiles exchanged. And she was invisible. Completely. A flash of anger pierced through the shock. How could they? How could they leave her here? Her throat constricted. She swallowed hard. Tried to summon her voice again. Nothing came. The terminal seemed impossibly large. The noise around her became a blur. Laughter. Footsteps. Announcements. Rolling wheels. All reminding her of the space they had left between them. A space that wasn't accidental. She sank into a nearby chair. Hand pressed to her forehead. Fingers still clutching the handbag. The chair felt cold, hard. She shivered. Trembled. Her chest ached. The betrayal burned deep, sharper than she expected. And yet, the micro detail of that laugh, that precise moment of indifference, it pierced her more than any words could. Every small gesture she had ignored before, the guiding hand, the quick glance away, the polite control, now made sense. It was all leading to this. She pressed her face into her hands. Tears ran freely now. Hot, sharp, unrelenting. Awe, she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. Every second a reminder that she had trusted too easily. Every movement around her a silent echo of their departure. Her breathing slowed slightly, uneven still, but determination began to seep through the panic. Her eyes lifted. She had been left behind, yes. But she was not gone. Not yet. The terminal continued to move around her. Travelers rushing, announcements blaring. But she held on to one small, solid truth: she was still here. She was still present. And she would act. She took a deep, shaky breath. Gripped her handbag once more, not for protection this time, but as a reminder that she could still move. Step by step. Forward. She would find them. She had to. She stood abruptly, leaving the chair cold beneath her. Each movement sent tremors through her legs, but fear pushed her forward. She gripped her handbag tighter, not for comfort this time, but to anchor herself. To remind herself she still existed. She scanned the terminal. They were gone. Beyond the glass doors, the boarding gate swallowed them. The crowd shifted, rolling past her. Travelers rushing with purpose. Luggage clattering. Voices overlapping. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Her mind raced, a storm of questions. How could they do this? Why? Was it deliberate? Could she have misread the pace? Misjudged the instructions? No. She knew now. Every glance, every polite guiding hand, every soft word had been intentional. She swallowed hard. Tears blurred her vision. Awe, the sting of betrayal. Hot and raw. Yet beneath the sorrow, a spark of determination flickered. She could not stay still. Could not let the fear paralyze her. She started moving again. Step by step. Searching. Eyes darting. Scanning faces, gate numbers, announcements. Every second stretched. Every motion felt like slow motion. Yet she moved, propelled by urgency and the burning need to catch them. She tried the phone again. Her son's number. Busy signal. Daughter-in-law's office. Voicemail. She pressed buttons frantically, her fingers trembling, hands shaking. Each attempt failed. The world seemed to conspire against her. The terminal, full of people, became silent in her mind. She felt small. Invisible. Alone. Her chest tightened. Breath shallow. Heart racing. She had to act. She could not wait. She would follow. She would find them. She would understand. She had to. She remembered the guiding hand. The quick glances. The subtle control that had seemed harmless before. Now every memory cut deeper. Every gesture confirmed it: she had been led into this moment. And she would not let it end here. She moved faster. Past ticket counters, through lines of people, avoiding rolling suitcases and distracted travelers. Her legs ached. Knees weak. But adrenaline pushed her beyond the limits of her body. She paused for a second, catching her breath. Eyes scanning. Gate numbers flashing overhead. And then she saw them again. A few gates ahead. Standing in line for another checkpoint. Her daughter-in-law smiling, talking softly. Her son absorbed in his phone, oblivious to the world. Her stomach twisted. A surge of anger and fear collided in her chest. She pressed forward again. Faster. Every step fueled by betrayal, every heartbeat a drum of urgency. She would not be ignored. She would not be abandoned. The crowd pressed in. Announcements shouted over one another. Rolling suitcases scraped against the floor. Her breaths came in sharp pulls, but her focus never wavered. She had one goal: to reach them. To confront them. To reclaim her place in the space she had once trusted. And yet, as she moved, a tiny flicker of doubt surfaced. Could she reach them in time? Had the plane already closed? Her chest tightened again. Her hands gripped the bag so hard it hurt. Fear, desperation, and resolve tangled in one pulse. She pressed onward, weaving through the terminal, scanning every corner, every face, every movement, every announcement. Nothing would stop her now. Not tiredness. Not doubt. Not fear. The old seed of unease had grown into a fire. And that fire was carrying her forward, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. Toward confrontation. Toward clarity. Toward answers she would not leave unanswered. She would find them. She would confront them. She would not be left behind again. And as she pressed forward, determination became stronger than despair. She reached the gate. The crowd was thinner now, but the terminal still felt like a river moving too fast around her. Each step pressed heavy against her legs. Knees weak. Breath sharp and shallow. She gripped her handbag, knuckles white. Every step carried the weight of betrayal, every heartbeat a drum of urgency. And there they were. Just beyond the boarding line. Her daughter-in-law, smiling, chatting softly with the gate attendant. Her son, tall, calm, focused on his phone. Neither glanced at her. Neither acknowledged her presence. Shock hit her chest again. Cold. Sharp. She pressed a hand against the glass separating the line from the seating area. Her reflection stared back at her wide eyes, trembling lips, hands gripping the bag like it could hold her heart together. Wait. Her voice broke, raw, desperate. She tried again, louder, sharper. Stop. But it was swallowed by the crowd. Swallowed by the hum of the terminal. Swallowed by the distance they had created. Her daughter-in-law glanced at her finally. A polite, fleeting glance. Then back to her phone. Back to the boarding procedure. Calm. Unbothered. That single gesture, so minimal, yet so absolute, shattered something inside her. The ache was almost physical, a hollowing in her chest. She stepped forward, weaving between passengers. Her legs shook. Heart pounding. Breath ragged. She pressed toward them, each step fueled by disbelief, anger, and sorrow mixed together into a heavy pulse of determination. Her son finally looked up. Just for a moment. Their eyes met. But it wasn't recognition. Not really. Just acknowledgement of her presence. And then, back to the phone. Calm. Detached. Every micro-gesture, every smile, every deliberate step of the daughter-in-law, it hit her in waves now. The betrayal was complete. She had been left. Purposefully. Tears spilled freely. Hot, unrelenting. She pressed her hand to her forehead, trying to steady herself. Fingers gripping the strap of her bag, as if it could anchor her to reality. She swallowed hard. Couldn't speak. Couldn't move fast enough to bridge the distance between them. And then the realization fully struck, they were boarding. The line moved forward. And she would not be on that plane with them. Not now. Not ever. She pressed closer, desperation clawing at her chest. Tried to call them again. Tried to shout. Tried to reach across the growing physical and emotional distance. But it was too late. The gate agents scanned their passes. The daughter-in-law smiled lightly, polite, dismissive. They stepped forward. Her son's phone still in hand, eyes forward, posture calm. Every heartbeat screamed betrayal. Every step she hadn't been able to take hammered in her chest. She had followed. Trusted. Believed. And now, the truth was laid bare in front of her. She sank to the floor. Knees shaking, hands still clutching her bag. Breath ragged. Tears streaming. Awe, a mixture of disbelief, grief, and fury tore through her. The terminal swirled around her. Travelers passing, announcements echoing, luggage scraping. She sat there, invisible in plain sight. And yet, beneath the heartbreak, beneath the shock, a fire flickered. A tiny pulse of resolve. She would not let this define her. She would not let their betrayal break her completely. But for now, she was alone. Left behind in a world moving too fast. Betrayed by the people she trusted most. Her chest ached. Breath uneven. Fingers gripping her handbag. And still, through the sorrow and the anger, determination began to simmer. She would rise. She would move. She would face the aftermath. But the moment of betrayal, the raw, unfiltered reality, was hers alone. She stayed on the floor, knees bent, hands clutching her handbag as if it contained her very heart. The terminal moved around her in a blur, announcements, rolling suitcases, the chatter of travelers, all fading into the background. She felt small. Invisible. Lost. Tears streamed freely now. Hot, sharp, unrelenting. Each one burned like a tiny reminder of every promise she had believed. Each one echoed the trust she had given without question. Each one hammered the truth into her chest: she had been left behind. Purposely. Intentionally. Her breaths were shallow, uneven. She pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to steady herself. Trying to understand. Trying to name the pain. The anger clawed at her, sharp and bitter. She had trusted them. Believed in them. And now, nothing. The seed of doubt that had begun in Module 6 now bloomed fully. Every guiding hand, every polite word, every slight glance away, they had all been building toward this moment. She had walked willingly into betrayal. Her legs shook beneath her. Every small motion reminded her of the helplessness she felt. She hugged herself, gripping the bag tight, feeling the weight of reality pressing down. The terminal was full of people, and yet, she felt utterly, completely alone. And then, a flicker of reflection broke through the haze. She remembered herself, not just the trembling figure in front of strangers, but the woman who had lived through storms, who had carried burdens heavier than any suitcase, who had survived loneliness before. She remembered the strength hidden beneath the sorrow. Her breath caught as she realized she could not undo what had been done. They had left. She had been abandoned. But she could choose how to respond now. How to rise. How to reclaim herself. She pressed her palms to the cool tile of the floor. Slowly, deliberately, she pushed herself upright. Legs weak, knees trembling. Heart still racing. Breath still shallow. But each movement carried weight. Each step was a small act of defiance. She moved to a nearby chair, lowering herself into it, clutching her handbag, not as a lifeline, but as a reminder of her presence. She let herself cry again, but this time, there was a subtle difference. The tears were still grief, still sorrow, but now mingled with determination. A seed of resilience growing amidst the ache. She thought of them. The daughter-in-law, calm, deliberate. Her son, distracted, distant. And yet, for the first time, she allowed herself to separate their actions from her self-worth. The betrayal was theirs, not hers. The abandonment reflected their choices, not her value. A sigh escaped her. A small, trembling sound. The first sign of release. The start of clarity. She took a shaky, uneven breath. Then another. And another. Step by step, inhale and exhale. Slowly, deliberately. The terminal continued to move around her. Rolling suitcases, conversations, announcements, but she felt herself settling into a rhythm. A fragile rhythm, yes. But a rhythm nonetheless. She let herself feel sorrow without being consumed by it. Anger without being paralyzed. Disbelief without being destroyed. The raw edge of betrayal remained, sharp as ever. But now it existed alongside a budding sense of control. Her grip on the handbag loosened slightly. Fingers flexed. She straightened her back, just a little. Shoulders still heavy, but not collapsed. Her head lifted. Eyes scanning, noticing details around her once again. The terminal no longer seemed impossibly large, just wide. Navigable. She could move. She could act. The betrayal had struck her to the core. But she would not let it define her entirely. Not yet. Not fully. And with that thought, small but potent, she realized something essential: she was still here. She had survived. She would survive. And slowly, ever so slowly, she would find a way to rise. She rose from the chair slowly, testing her legs. Still unsteady. Still trembling. But the fear that had gripped her moments ago had softened, replaced by a simmering resolve. She gripped her handbag not as a lifeline, but as a reminder that she was still present. Still capable. Still herself. The terminal stretched ahead, familiar yet distant. Travelers moved past, rolling suitcases and shuffling feet. Voices overlapped. Announcements echoed. And she walked among them, small, alone, but determined. Every step deliberate. Every breath measured. Step by step, she reclaimed the ground that had seemed to swallow her moments ago. She paused at the glass doors leading toward the boarding area. Beyond, she could see the plane waiting, the final checkpoint. Her daughter-in-law and son were gone. They had chosen. She had already survived the sting of that choice. Now it was time to choose herself. She thought back to every moment, every gesture that had signaled betrayal. The guiding hand, the polite words, the glances away. Each one had cut, yes, but each one also taught her something. About trust. About awareness. About never following blindly again. She let herself shiver, not from fear this time, but from the memory of the lessons learned. Her breathing steadied. She flexed her fingers around the strap of her handbag, loosening her grip just slightly. Strength returned in small increments. Each movement, a declaration: I exist. I am here. I matter. She moved forward with purpose now, weaving past travelers, checking signage, mapping her way mentally. She wasn't chasing them anymore. She wasn't pleading for acknowledgement. She was reclaiming agency. Small steps, deliberate choices. The world had moved past her once, now she would move deliberately within it. Her mind replayed the moments of shock, the raw grief, the disbelief. And yet, through the haze of emotion, clarity emerged. She had been abandoned. They had betrayed her. But she still had a choice. Still had control over the next steps. Still had the power to act for herself, to protect herself, to define herself outside of their decisions. She pressed herself against a railing briefly, taking a moment to steady her racing heart. Breath in. Breath out. She noticed the small details of the terminal, the cool tile beneath her shoes, the rolling of a suitcase, the bright signs above the gates. The world had moved around her. And she was moving too. Step by step, she rebuilt herself in the space they had tried to remove her from. Small victories, a steady pace, controlled breathing, awareness of her surroundings. Each tiny action a rebuke to the helplessness she had felt earlier. Each small movement, a reclaiming of autonomy. She stopped at a bench near a quieter corner. Sat down. Not to collapse, but to plan. To gather strength. To think clearly. She reflected on her son, her daughter-in-law, and the betrayal that had brought her here. The anger still simmered, yes, but it no longer dominated. Now it existed alongside understanding, alongside resolve, alongside the first hints of strategy. She exhaled, a long, controlled breath. She felt the tension in her shoulders ease fractionally. Her head lifted. Eyes scanning, taking in the space. She was no longer the same woman who had followed blindly. No longer the same woman who had been frozen by disbelief. She had been tested, and she was beginning to rise. And as she stood again, handbag in hand, legs strong enough to carry her, she felt it clearly for the first time: she had the power to move forward. To choose. To act. To reclaim herself. The betrayal had been theirs. The response, the recovery, the action, that was hers. She walked slowly through the terminal now, each step deliberate, steady, controlled. No longer trembling like moments ago. no longer clinging to fear. The weight of betrayal still pressed on her chest, but it no longer defined her. She had carried it, and she had survived it. She paused near a large window overlooking the tarmac. Planes taxied, engines humming, passengers boarding. She pressed her hands lightly against the cool glass. She allowed herself to remember the raw grief, the disbelief, the searing ache of abandonment. But she did not let it swallow her. Not anymore. Her daughter-in-law and son had gone. They had made their choice. And she had survived hers. Every moment of fear, every step of panic, every tear had led her to this point. She understood now, betrayal could not erase her existence. Could not erase her strength. Could not erase the life she still had to live. She breathed deeply, letting the air fill her lungs. Each inhale a reminder of presence. Each exhale a small release of sorrow. She had been left behind. Yes. But she was still here. Whole, breathing, capable. Determined. Her eyes wandered to the gates beyond. Travelers rushing, luggage rolling, conversations overlapping. Life moved on, as it always did. And she would move on too. But differently now. With awareness. With caution. With self-respect. She would not follow blindly again. She would not allow herself to be invisible in the world. A faint smile crossed her lips, small but real. Not a triumphant smile. Not a laugh of joy. But the quiet smile of survival. Of resilience. Of someone who had been tested and had begun to rise again. She remembered the moments that had hurt the most, the guiding hand, the polite words, the subtle control, the laughter at the boarding gate. Each one had cut deep. Each one had left a scar. But scars, she realized, were proof of living. Proof of endurance. Proof of survival. She pressed her hand against her heart, feeling the steady beat beneath her fingers. She let herself honor the pain, honor the betrayal, honor the lessons learned. And then, slowly, she let herself stand taller. Back straight. Shoulders squared. Eyes forward. Not in defiance of anyone else. Not in anger at the world. But in quiet assertion of herself. The terminal, once overwhelming, now seemed navigable. The noise, the movement, the chaos, it was life. And she was part of it. She could step forward. She could act. She could continue her journey, on her own terms. Her handbag swung gently at her side. Every small movement a reminder of agency, of choice. She had been abandoned, yes. But she had also been awakened. Strength had emerged from sorrow. Clarity from confusion. Resolve from despair. She exhaled fully, letting the tension leave her body. The tears she had shed were still there in memory, but they no longer dictated her steps. She smiled again, faintly, but with more certainty. And as she turned toward the exit, moving deliberately through the crowd, she knew this: the betrayal had been theirs. The pain had been hers to bear. But the life ahead, the strength, the choices, the steps forward, that was entirely hers. She would walk. She would move. She would live. And no one could take that from her.